do your openings. Okay, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Shannon Joseph. I'm the chair of Energy for a Secure Future, which is a new civil society initiative that includes business, Indigenous leaders, labor leaders, and others in a new conversation about energy. And we're really excited to be able to provide a few remarks today to the press. I'm joined by Crystal Smith, who's the Chief Counselor of the Haisla Nation, Karen Ogan, CEO of First Nations LNG Alliance, Billy Morin, Managing Director of Axelis, and John Desjardins, Executive Director of the Indigenous Resource Network. I'm very pleased that Chief Smith and Chief Morin are part of our advisory council and that the First Nations LNG Alliance and Indigenous Resource Network are part of our affiliate organizations. As the world looks for cleaner and more affordable and reliable sources of energy, our friends around the world, like Germany, Japan, are looking to Canada to help fill the gaps. Energy for a Secure Future believes that we can and we should leverage our energy resources to simultaneously provide affordable energy, but also to support our allies in reducing dependence on higher emitting fuels like coal, and most importantly, advancing economic development abroad and economic reconciliation in Canada. And the leaders here today are here to help tell the story of the work that's being done. That's very important as Canada looks to provide and play a greater role in the world. So I'll turn it over to Chief Counselor Smith. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Crystal Smith. I am the elected Chief Counselor of the Haisla Nation, also chairperson for the First Nations LNG Alliance, and proud board member of Cedar LNG. So I came to Ottawa to express our nation's support for LNG and to share how we are ensuring projects in our territory are sustainable and responsible and can be a solution for energy importing nations' needs. When Europeans, Asians, and Americans think of Canada's Indigenous peoples, they often think we oppose all energy development. I want to share how the story has evolved. We aren't victims of development. Increasingly, we are partners and even owners of major projects. My nation is the proponent of an LNG project on BC's west coast, Cedar LNG. It will be the largest majority First Nations-owned infrastructure project in Canadian history and the first Indigenous-owned LNG export terminal in the world. I'm pleased it was granted environmental approval from the BC and federal government last month, and this is important momentum to build on. We have spent years working with our community members, elders, neighboring nations and communities and industry partners to develop a project that both minimizes the impact to the local environment and has the lowest GHG intensity of any LNG in the world. No one cares more about our territory than we do. We will leave it to future generations in a way that ensures they can still practice our culture and traditions. During this week, but also over the past few years, I have met diplomats from around the world interested in our project, asking about Canadian LNG and how to get more of it to market. Other nations are asking us for our help, and the Haisla Nation has a solution for them. And one and all of Canada can be proud of. That's the message I'm here to bring to the G7, including the Government of Canada, ahead of their meeting next month. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Karen Ogan. I'm Gitsan Wet'suwet'en. I'm also the former chief of the Wet'suwet'en First Nation. I'm here to represent the members of the First Nations LNG Alliance. The First Nation LNG Alliance is a collective of First Nations participating in and supportive of sustainable and responsible LNG development. Our board is made up of elected chiefs and councillors. We have worked hard for the last decade to become partners and owners in natural gas projects. LNG development has provided immediate and medium-term opportunities to lift thousands of Indigenous people and our communities out of intergenerational poverty. We are already seeing benefits from employment, training, contracting, procurement, and benefits agreements. This groundbreaking progress has been advanced through our community's hard work and leadership. The members of the First Nations LNG Alliance also recognize that many opportunities are being lost through energy and climate policies that are missing the big picture. That's why we have sent letters to all the members of the G7, including Canada, calling on them to include energy and LNG on the agenda on their next meeting in Hiroshima in May. We are determined to develop our resources in a socially and environmentally responsible way. We see the energy crisis and affordability issues that energy importing nations in Europe or Asia and our nations have solutions. We want to work with Canada and our allies in the G7 to bring urgency to the development and export of Canadian LNG. That is why I have come to Ottawa. Misai.
Oki, tanse, natoki topi natsigasan maskeg seochi. Billy Morin, Chief Billy Morin, former sitting chief of the Nainao Cree Nation, former Grand Chief of Confederacy at Treaty 6, now a new role in terms of providing advisory and senior advisory to Energy for a Secured Future. I want to share that Indigenous involvement in Canadian natural gas is more than just about LNG. We are using resources from our territories to develop blue hydrogen and petrochemicals that the world needs as well. When I was chief of ENOC, my nation entered into 2 industry partnerships alongside neighboring nations to sequester carbon in and around Alberta's industrial heartland. We were brought to the table as partners right from the beginning, and with the idea that we can grow exports of clean hydrogen as well as other energy projects that the world needs. Now in my current role, I help facilitate investment deals that involve Indigenous ownership in major projects. I've come to Ottawa this week because I want our allies to know that Canadian energy projects are moving forward with Indigenous nations as partners and as owners. We are working to advance big energy projects from production, pipelines and terminals to hydrogen and carbon capture. We want to get involved in them even more so now. They provide own source revenues, jobs, and business contracts for our people to help advance our self-determination and reconciliation in this country. I want the G7 to know that Indigenous peoples are not a barrier to more energy exports from Canada. We are actually the solution. We are getting pretty good at partnerships, and we want to reimagine what nation-to-nation partnerships mean, not just with Canada, but Canada's international relations as well. The word First Nations has nations in it for a reason. Indigenous communities want that investment, they want those global customers, and they want those responsible energy projects to move ahead. And that's the message we're sharing here this week with our allies. Thank you.
Hi, my name is John Desjarlais. I have the pleasure of serving as the Executive Director for the Indigenous Resource Network. I am Nainao Metis, or Cree Métis, from Kaministigo Menagoscak, commonly known as Cumberland House in northeastern Saskatchewan. So the Indigenous Resource Network is an independent, nonprofit organization that advocates for Indigenous entrepreneurs, businesses, and workers engaged in the resource development sector. We support resource development that benefits Indigenous communities economically while maintaining high standards of environmental protection. From our perspective, this seems to be the position of most Indigenous people in Canada. As our polling shows, 65% of Indigenous people in Canada support resource development, and a majority support oil and gas, specifically by almost 2-to-1 ratio to those opposed. So Canada produces the most sustainable and environmentally responsible energy in the world. Indigenous people are progressively becoming more involved in that development. Data from Census 2021 shows that oil and gas sector provides the highest paying wages for Indigenous workers in Canada. We make almost 3 times more working in the oil and gas extraction sector than the average income across all industries. Indigenous women in particular benefit economically working in oil and gas, which represents the top 3 highest paying sectors for Indigenous women. This helps Indigenous families and communities to prosper. So the Indigenous Resource Network has joined APTN LNG Alliance and others, sending letters to the G7 nation to advocate for Canadian LNG. We stand with Indigenous people that want to produce and export their natural gas to our allies around the world, while ensuring Indigenous workers and businesses have the opportunities to participate in the sector. For this is a common sense win-win solution to address energy needs, climate goals, and economic reconciliation. Thank you.
So we'd now be happy to take any questions in the room or on the phone.
We don't have any questions right now, but if there's anything else,
Okay. There isn't. But thank you very much for coming, and please don't hesitate to reach out to us. If you want to learn more about the work we're doing, visit www.energysecurefuture.ca. Thank you.